Hey, so we are doing for Halloween. I made this guy watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I introduced it to him, and we have watched both part 1 and 2 since they're the most Halloweenish, especially since they have vampires.
You mean the entire show is about like bizarre flamboyant men taking on vampires?
And it's not like the Aztec vampires in Nocturne or Aztec Vampire. It's a completely different beast. Actually, the vampires in general in Castlevania, or in most common interpretations of vampires, it's something completely different for both parts 1 and 2. And since we're doing both ones, let's start off with part 1, shall we? So, we open up on Jonathan Joestar being a baby, and his father got an accident, and the father of a certain character came to basically, supposedly save his life. But Jonathan's father thought that was the situation, so he repaid him by willing to take care of his son and being him paid. Then we cut 12 years later to Jonathan Joestar, a rambunctious yet well-meaning boy who looks like he's 18.
He's like 12 years old.
Yeah, you take over.
Yeah. Yeah, you know this is gonna be a special kind of show where they do the whole Disney thing where they miscalculate people's age compared to what they actually look like.
Except this is on steroids, literally.
Yeah, this timeline, they must have passed on like genetics and like steroids, because by the time he's like 20, he's got the build of Olympic.
Continue with what I just built off.
Yeah. Okay, I'll continue the plot summary. But anyway, I remember. As Jonathan Joestar is growing up, he encounters someone who comes to live in their mansion. This blonde guy by the name of Dio Brando. But unbeknownst to them, he is trying to take the inheritance money of the Joestar family. And you can tell that he has sinister implications due to the subtle ways that they build his character.
Like burning his frickin' dog alive in a furnace while the dog was sleeping until it knocked on the door and woke up in the furnace. And even worse, when Jonathan fell in love with a girl who's also 12, even though she's 8, she looks 18 also. And it's funny that when you see her as an adult, you can't really like be as masculine, show difference in age as men, but Dio basically kissed her, sexual assaulted her. You will now have my first kiss, not Jonathan! That it was I, Dio! And so Jonathan found out about it, and then he beat the crap out of Dio when he first came into his house, and then his blood went onto the mask, which we will get to the importance of. So years go by, and Dio decides to play the more like from the network instead of from the World's End, not to merge with Jonathan and actually be friends with him until he has his right time to take advantage of him and his father. Take over.
Right. So I might as well talk about all the crazy stuff first if we're doing a plot summary. They become friends to an extent, but Jonathan is still wondering, but what about those subtle first impressions that he got from Dio? And surely enough, Jonathan's dad is dying, or at the very least is very ill. So Jonathan is trying to take care of him, and he notices Dio is providing some medicine, and then Jonathan's like, "Hang on, wait a minute, what are you taking up to Dad?" Cue the to be continued thing.
Yeah.
And then, as it turns out, he catches Dio trying to poison the dad, so Dio's in a lot of trouble. He gets surrounded by the police, but Dio, in a last-minute effort, takes this stone mask, which the Joestar family just happens.
And also, may I remind you that before Dio, before he did all this, he encountered a guy who he tested, made an experiment of him, put on the mask, and put his blood on it. And the guy, he thought it was a dud until he became a vampire. And then Dio, since he is literally the incarnation of evil, hates that he would die by sunrise. And as he was about to die, the vampire, is in common incarnations of vampires, die by sunrise. So, continue.
So Dio, in desperation, takes the stone mask and becomes an evil vampire. And Jonathan tries his best to duke it out with Dio Brando as the mansion goes on fire.
And also he made friends with Speedwagon as he was trying to find the cure for his grandfather. And Speedwagon was his enemy, like Piccolo style from Dragon Ball Z. But they rapidly become friends, and he went from a straight thug to an absolute gentleman.
So Jonathan and Piccolo managed to not Piccolo.
Speedwagon.
Speedwagon. They managed to survive. Jonathan's dad is dead, but they head off to a journey, and on the way, Jonathan encounters a teacher with a very
Baron Zeppelin, and he introduces full Obi-Wan Yoda style the power system of Part 1 and 2, Hamon, that can literally absorb light into power.
Yeah, it's apparently some kind of Eastern monk influence kind of electricity power, which it's well defined, but at the same time it's not very well defined.
Well, it's bizarre. That's the point. It's bizarre.
So they managed to train up well with it, and they had a few shenanigans, but Dio Brando, being the vampire, is increasing in his powers.
And he literally had a mother turn into a vampire with a baby. And then the mother literally ate her child and ate her child's blood right in front of a woman who eventually Jonathan would come to find upon his journey of the son of her little brother, who they're going to eventually save. And then Dio comes in like a boss, like a mini boss level with mini bosses of Scottish zombie knights that were the head knights of the Mary Queen of Scots against Queen Elizabeth, like the first. That it's absolutely mental, and it really does have that Castlevania more than Twilightmania Nocturne already. It with these zombies, and then later they defeat one of the zombies actually has a change of heart and remembers his loyalty to his queen, and so much that he gave his sword Luck and then named it Pluck and gave it to Jonathan. But the other one wasn't so easily convinced. The bigger one wasn't so easily convinced, and then Jonathan was entrapped by the bigger one.
Yeah. So basically, long story short, the mentor guy gets torn in half, and yet it's still long enough.
And it was also prophesized. It was prophesized that he would die with helping a lion.
Right. this series can get pretty over the top. But basically, to make a long story short, Mentor dies, they're all sad, then they go off as a team and increasing members to have one last final battle with Dio. They face off against him, they beat him.
Yeah, no, wait. Don't, you're self-surprising. And it's also how, even like with the gothic atmosphere of the castle that Dio's in, that it gives off, it's a mix of both Bram Stoker's Dracula and Castlevania at the same time. It really does feel like that Jonathan's like Simon Belmont going up against Dracula. It can't be a coincidence that there's no influence on that. And there's also a couple more hormone users that joined the final battle against Dio. And Dio has laser beams, full like Darkseid or Superman laser beams. That's completely new to vampires. Because have you ever seen vampires have laser eyes, laser vision? Like, so much that
pretty much
like that when Jonathan made the final move against him, Dio's head went off the castle and his laser vision went into the sky, just so his little minion could catch him, so he can live on further. So, back to Jonathan and Irina. They got married, so there can be more to the story. And they go on their honeymoon, they say goodbye to their friends that they made along the way, and everyone lives happily ever after, right? Right?
Do they?
Right? Seriously, right? They had to live happily forever after. They couldn't have. They had to. Because it seems so satisfying. Dio had to have been dead, right? Continue.
Or is it? So Dio's still alive, and there's one last encounter where Dio is trying to reattach his head right onto Jonathan.
And they were on the Titanic, mind you. No, they weren't. Well, they could have been.
That would have been horrific if it wasn't for the fact that Jonathan, despite being like lasered in the neck, still has enough hormone to get the ship to blow up, and then I've increasingly dying word. Like, seriously, why does it take forever for these people to die?
I don't know. So, that Irina spotted a baby who died at the hands of the zombie, and she took it to raise it, and Dio, well, he was in the arms of Jonathan, tried to his whole plan was to take Jonathan's head off so he could claim his body as his own.
Right.
So Dio inevitably kills Jonathan, with him truly like Jesus Christ, having unconditional love for this demonic incarnation of evil, holding his enemy's head in his arms, and died completely and utterly as the ship blew up and Irina went into the coffin that Dio hid in, and with the baby, and then she was rescued, and Speedwagon became filthy rich and founded the Speedwagon Foundation and destroyed the mask. Or did he?
Right.
As we cut to Aztec Temple, where there are more masks and a pill and a man stuck in stone. Boom.
Right. Cue battle tendency. This is
No. First, let's get our thoughts about part 1, and that before we get into part 2. All right. So part 1. Wow, that was quite the thing.
Right from the start, you get the impression that this is... It's so melodramatic. It's so over the top. It's hilarious, and yet it has these things where you shouldn't get angry at how stupid it is, but
it would not have survived as a Western thing, as a Western story. It would not.
It's not really taking itself that seriously, which makes the show really fun to watch. And It makes for a lot of moments where it's just so entertaining and just how absolutely crazy certain things can get. So like,
and you want to like smack your head in a lot of it. You want to smack your head, but you just can't because it enthralls you somehow, even though it really shouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the kind of thing where you want to get mad at it, but you can't get mad at it.
It's like a dog. It's like a dog being so obnoxious, so crazy, so wild, but you can't just get angry at it. You just want to love and hug it. You get it because since the creator of the show hates irony, that the creator of the show hates the manga hates dogs so much that he in the first part set him on fire. Set dog on fire.
My days. Dio Brando is so over-the-top evil. He makes Disney villains look subtle by comparison.
Even like the demon from Mount on like what? Remind me what it is? Night on Bald Mountain. That even he like, oh my, you truly are the devil over me.
There's some other crazy moments, like there's these zombie henchmen that we mentioned earlier who are official Scottish guards who help Mary Queen of Scots.
And it's autistically attention to detail. Even if it's fictitious, it is so much that by the end they're decapitated, and it still have some semblance of historical facts.
It's the way these stories are explained, like the supposed romance between young Jonathan and his future wife, as well as the Scottish guards. It just comes right out of the blue and somewhat rushed, and you just think, what? And then like the Scottish guard, like his hair is so
Rapunzel! Rapunzel!
Rapunzel, let down your tricky hair.
Yeah, actually, since you're Scottish, so you don't even need to do the accent.
Yeah. Sometimes you gotta exaggerate depending on which area of Scotland, I suppose.
What about Speedwagon? What about the Allies?
The Allies. I suppose they were quite fun in itself. Again, I mentioned earlier that this Hammond power is consistent yet not consistent at the same time. Like, I get it's some kind of electric power.
It's like, since light is the enemy of vampires, they're basically exploring it to its final conclusion that light is literally the enemy of vampires in a metaphysical way.
Right. So one of the common tropes of the show, as we'll go in later, is that, and I can see why you quite like this book, is how creative they can get, especially when
autistic detail, attention to detail.
I mean, again, with how crazy this show, I just think. These characters really have to stop the battle every few seconds just to talk about their strategies.
It's a shonen. Would you expect anything more?
At the same time, you think, wow, yeah, that is quite creative. And if you had this kind of power, that's quite a creative way to use it in that specific way. And they explain it in a kind of a scientific detail how, like, certain types of cotton and specific interactions with water all contribute to how you can pass on Hammond and stuff like that.
And also, you can definitely say that the male characters would not survive in a modern, like, in the hellscape of modern Hollywood today. They would all be seen as misogynists. And Dio, since he would be seen as too evil, a dumb, idiotic, one-dimensional villain. But, honestly, I don't care if that's true. He's so fun to watch. Especially the Japanese dub. Goodbye, Jojo!
Goodbye, Jojo! Zeke Yeager's voice actor was having the time of his life.
I know, Zeke Yeager voiced, yeah. Both two villains who were over the top, except one was more taken seriously and one wasn't.
I remember watching that scene where Dio kissed the girl, and his explanation, I was in hysterical laughter at how ridiculous his explanation is. Like, haha, I kissed you first.
It really is it's like a corny fairy tale. It's like a corny fairy tale a little bit.
It's so ridiculous.
Like, I was your first kiss. And also, let's get to Jonathan for last.
Yeah.
The Jojo.
Alright. I got a question for you, Jojo. How did you get that Power Rangers outfit in your time period?
No, it's actually more also like Simon Belmont. That's what's more looked like.
Yeah.
It's not exactly Simon Belmont because he has more like chain a bit, but it's a bit mix of Power Ranger and Simon Belmont.
Yeah. But yeah, what happens if you combine Power Ranger with Simon Belmont? You get Jonathan Joestar. And honestly, I probably think as
and he is the archetypal do-gooder hero. Yes, he is. But you know what? I'm still endeared by that, even if he is really, really archetypical. Like, even if it is too much, if there's a reason why Mufasa wasn't the main character in Lion King. But honestly, I kind of enjoyed that aspect if Mufasa was the main character against Dio's Scar, because they had that same relationship.
That does make sense now you mention it. So yeah, God, it really does make a lot of sense. I suppose you could compare Jonathan to Simba in that regard.
No, not to Simba, more to Mufasa also. And remember, Mufasa, after all, Dio, like Scar, killed Mufasa. And basically, we'll get to Simba later. We'll get to Simba later. Not in the next part, but in the part afterwards. That's where there'll be a similar Simba the Scar relationship in the third part. This is now Mufasa first, like a young Mufasa versus Scar. So, yeah, and continue.
I think it's safe to say that. I think Jonathan Joestar is going to be immensely more likable than Richter Belmont, because even though Jonathan Joestar is kind of an archetype, at least he has more of a structure as an archetype.
And I would say J.R.R. Tolkien, as much as he probably wouldn't like the series overall, he would definitely love the first part, or at least the second part too, but mainly the first part, especially with how, like, Jonathan is portrayed as such a healthy masculine character, and especially with how incessantly evil Dio is to than Morgoth or Sauron. I'd say more Sauron than Morgoth, but how after all, Sauron is the Lord of Vampires, so he would be similar to that of Sauron. So, and also especially how English it is to part one, how authentically English, even though it's from a Japanese author. So, but he would definitely love the English soul that's in part one. Alright, that is part one of Phantom Blood. Now on to part two, Battle Tendency. And we start off, continue, come, you start. I started part one, you start part two.
Okay, so part two focuses on the grandson of Jonathan Joestar. The main character here is Joseph Joestar. You'll notice that it is indeed the Joestar family, because they've all have similar physical traits in common: the Olympic build, the longish face, the varying degrees of ridiculous hair that can stick out like bats, and their insistence to do Hammond, but they do quite a distinctive job right from the get-go.
And he's 17 years old. He's 17 years old, and he has the building of his grandfather as Olympic, like, medalist or something, as, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger, like, that of a Greek statue. We'll get to the Greek stuff later, and Roman stuff later.
There's another.
So, we start off with, actually more like Speedwagon and, like, Straight-So, who was from part one, and they investigate, a new masks in an Aztec temple with a man inside the stone. So they're about to destroy the masks and the man until straight up betrays them, and he loved Dio, and he basically cuts Speedwagon's head. I mean, not he damages it, and then puts it in the river, and he should be dead. Speedwagon, especially how he's older than he was in part 1. He's around 70 or 80, 70, and how weak his head, he should be dead. He should be straight up dead. I don't care if Speedwagon Foundation is going to be like the Shield with how highly technologically advanced their medicine is. He should be dead. You see, you want to beat it. You want to smack this series, but you can't. You still can't. And then we cut back to New York with this runt called Smokey, who befriends Joseph after he has some level of hormone. He knows it, but he doesn't have any training with it. I think Arena definitely did tell him of. He definitely, and well, he befriends Smokey, and also Arena, who's now elderly, also takes Smokey in, and so it's explained that Joseph knows the story of his grandfather. He knows of vampires and hormone. He just hasn't been trained in it, so he has some training with it, and he always has that edge, especially when one person in the restaurant was insulting Smokey, a racist, and he always copied his enemy's moves before they said anything, and then when they said it, and then he basically hormoned his ass. So, continue for me.
Yeah. So, right from the get-go, the show does a good job at distinguishing Joseph Joestar as his own character compared to Jonathan. Joseph's a bit more full of himself compared to Jonathan. He's quite confident in his ability to do Hammond, but there's still some areas to grow with, obviously.
And also, continue with the story. Continue the story. So, we get to Smokey and Joseph in a cafe, and then who is now a vampire, straight up attacks Joseph, and he basically he told him all the stuff about how Dio and vampires and fangs, and he noticed. So he straight up pulls out a Tommy gun and blows him up and the whole cafe. And when that didn't work on him, Joseph ran away! Run! And so he ran away, and well, this girl who was a journalist was getting a camera of it, and so kidnapped her and put her on the Golden Gate on the Brooklyn Bridge, all for Smokey and Joseph to try and save her. And even more distinguished himself from Jonathan, I don't even know this girl. And Jonathan from heaven would say, "Shame on you, grandson. You should save her." I don't care what you say, old man. I'm not gonna save her shit. I don't know who she is. So Straito takes advantage of that. He wouldn't. So he tries to kill Joseph right then and there, so he does not become more powerful. But Joseph inevitably gets the best of him, and then before Straito dies, he reveals that that Speedwagon was put in the river, and it was in Mexico, and that there's a pillar man that he will find that there's a pillar man, and there's these more stone masks, so he will find out what happened specifically to Speedwagon. So he goes straight down to Mexico, and guess what? Speedwagon's alive, and he's taken held captive by the Nazis, the Third Reich.
And here he's captured by, I might as well just call him Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's probably called something else, but
he's called von Stroheim. Von Stroheim.
But I know he's Austrian, and presumably Austrians sound like that. I really need to do my research, but I just kept calling him Arnold Schwarzenegger character because he reminded me so much of him. The build, the haircut, the accent. Oh,
so it's and also especially how this show will betray the Nazis. It's also this sense Phantom of Blood would be more Dracula. This is going to be the Last Crusade. So instead of the Lost Ark and the Holy Grail, it is now the stone mask that the Nazis are after. And honestly, I think the stone masks would benefit them more than those goody two-shoe artifacts ever would. So evil benefits evil. So Speedwagon is held captive, and they have the Pillar Man, and they're trying everything they do to get him out to see if he's alive or he's impressive. And Joseph, how he gets in, he basically leaves a Nazi on the cactus, and then he drags Queen himself as a distraction to the Nazis, and then he beats the crap out of them, and then he infiltrates it, and the Nazis with Speedwagon got the Pillar Man out. And he, at first, seemed a little, dumb to the Nazis. But soon, very, very soon, he became very intelligent, very dominant, and they knew it. And then Joseph, just like Indiana Jones, couldn't fit into his Nazi disguise. And so he manages to get into the room, and he reveals himself as Joseph Joestar, and finds that Speedwagon is alive, and faces off against the Pillar Man, and inevitably Joseph leads him outside the sunlight, and the Pillar Man, at first it was like he was done for, but no, he actually resisted a bit, because he can go inside of other people. So he went inside of Stroheim after he cut himself off, and then he ripped himself in half, Stroheim in half, and managed to get in a well, and Joseph and him in the well, but it was high noon. It's high noon, like from Overwatch. So the Pillar Man is now defeated and in stone at the bottom of the well. But Stroheim tells Joseph that there's more Pillarmen, 3 more Pillarmen, and they're all in Italy. And he'll find a man who is in charge of protecting their slumber from being awoken, and in the name of Caesar Zeppelin, the grandson of Jonathan's master. Continue, Calum.
So Caesar becomes the new mentor for...
Not exactly, no. A fellow apprentice, like Obi-Wan, Anakin. More, kind of a bit mixed in that way. We'll get to that.
Yeah, fair enough. Right. So basically, Caesar teaches Joseph a few new nuances in regards to Hammond power, as well as shows him the fine cultures of Italian cuisine.
Like Squid Ink Italy. Squid Ink spaghetti.
That looks tasty.
Mm-hmm. It's real, by the way.
Italian food. Yeah, I should try that. I would love to go to Italy to try out.
Yeah.
So anyway, make a long story short, Caesar. Long story short, Caesar and Joseph meet up with a new mentor called Lisa.
And the Pillarmen are released out of their slumber and are now roaming around freely. And as Joseph tries to stop them from escaping, one named Wamu puts a ring near his heart, a poisonous ring that will kill him in 30 days, so they can face off properly. And if you want that out of you, you'll defeat him. And one ACDC, named after the band ACDC, put another ring in his throat just for insurance. And Cars, the leader of them, was watching and ordered them to flee. And that's when they went to Lisa for more training. And she'll be very important very, very soon. So, what is their first training? Lisa puts them at the bottom of a pit and has them climb a pillar made out of oil. Covered in oil, soaked in it, like a fountain. Continue.
and they have to climb it, and with Hammond, but it takes them days. Like seriously, how are they not? They're probably starving.
Actually, I think took them one day. It took them one day.
One whole day. Maybe
or 2 whole days. I think 2 whole days.
My days. Caesar manages to get the barrier, and Joseph manages to have a very clever, unique trick to maneuver away around the way out.
Especially when one oil flushes around in a circle of light all around them, where Caesar was more trained, went straight through it like a leap of faith. Last Crusade, mind you, but Joseph had the unique technique of using the current to pull himself through the veil. And then Lisa took them in training, and then they had their old training montage where they did other stuff. And then we are introduced to Susie Q, who Joseph has a bit of they may have a bit of thing with each other, but as they do their last. Oh, and I forgot to mention that Joseph had a mask on him. At least on their first encounter with Lisa, so I forgot to mention. So as their last day of training montage, where they meet Miss Selena and the other one who died. I don't even remember his name because he died. So, but I buy it because Caesar is so conviction with his training when he found out that WAMU, or no, it was ACDC. ACDC had come in and killed. Oh, it was Joseph that was the mentor that know the name. I was so convinced by Joseph how he trained because the acting still pulled through. Well, Caesar and Misselina were training other way. So basically, ACDC and Joseph were battling each other, and they even mentioned like Sun Tzu's Art of War, like beat the opponent before the battle, like deciding victory before the battle even begins. And they have this whole like mind game 4D chess with each other, and Joseph manages to defeat him, and also gets the mask off, and also gets the ring that gets rid of the so as the antidote gets rid of the ring in his pipe. So Caesar and Misselina saw this, and but he already defeated him by the Thessalos. So Joseph, now with the mask off and also with the pipe and seriously, how with his heart with 2 rings in his heart and his lungs, how could he even done it with the first test? With the whole, how could he even practice his hormone with that straining on him and the mask too? And I don't even care. So back to what I was saying, that Joseph was walking back to Lisa, and he had the brain of ACDC's brain on his back. Continue for me.
Right. So if I remember this correctly in the right order, this is the part
where Susie Q. Well, no, it's first Susie Q that they had their little cute chat, and then.
Then it's the part where Joseph turns on Lisa taking a bath in the rich cuisine Italian.
Oh, nice! He doesn't know. But after he pervs on her, basically ACDC takes control of Susie Q, full Exorcist style, or Evil Dead style also. And they both arrive in the bathroom, and Caesar catches her naked, but they are too distracted by ACDC brainwashing, mind controlling Susie Q. So they manage to conduct hormone enough to finally to fight back into both seem useless until the sun arose and it went on Joseph's body, and then finally ACDC was done for, and they managed to heal Susie Q. So, and also, I forgot to mention that there's the red stone of Asia that Lisa had. That is the main key to important for Cars, WAMU, and ACDC's plan to become immortal and to conquer the sun with the mask on. So, and she mailed it down to Switzerland, in which ACDC managed to pinpoint when he was as Susie Q. So they all go to Switzerland except for Susie Q, and they find the Third Reich. The Third Reich is there, and a very specific someone is also there too. But if there's like any Western like story, even like Inglourious Bastards, they would seem as another antagonist. But this is the interesting thing. They're the allies to the heroes. They are British, the allies. So you continue.
Yeah, so long story short, Arnold Schwarzenegger becomes General
Grievous! Yeah. And he faced off against cars as those cyberpunk Manus blades. And von Stroheim has a machine gun in his torso. And so they fight off against cars in the inn, and then in the middle of the next day, Caesar found out where cars in Walmu were in, and they were in this hotel in the middle of the day. So Caesar came to confront them in the hotel. So Walmu defeats Caesar, and he dies with a cross like brick on his face. Joe Joseph and Lisa come, and they were a bit in denial at first, and then they saw the blood coming out of the rock. They were crying, Caesar! And you get enthralled by it somehow. It's so crazy and over the top, but you somehow are endeared by it. And then they go up to the hotel, and they see cars with his a legion of zombies up on the ceiling like bats.
Completely useless. They are completely useless.
And Walmu, so they all propose that they're an impasse, so decided to settle this off full Roman style, and in a Roman Colosseum in Italy, where Joseph will be facing off against Walmu, and Cars and Lisa will be facing off afterwards. So you continue.
So they fight. Joseph Joestar, long story short, manages to outsmart his opponent in the chariot race. Lisa goes against Cars, but unfortunately, Lisa finds herself in a vulnerable, weak position where
bring, 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 bring. Bring, 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 bring.
I think you know. Literally taking a upper leg and literally like bring.
And he's also named after a rock star. Cars is literally named after a rock star. And then, as Joseph and Lisa are at their tail end, the Third Reich arrives as the Deus Ex Machina, saving Lisa with Speedwagon and Smokey all there! And as Smokey lays another bombshell, a huge bombshell, that Lisa is Joseph's long-lost mother, who he perved on! And they went through a whole explanation of why Lisa never told why. So, Lisa was once named Elizabeth, and she was that baby on the ship where Alina escaped in, and so Irina took her in and raised her, and Elizabeth then married George Joestar, who was Jonathan's son, and who was, just like his father, more than Joseph ever will be, a Chad English pilot. But who, unfortunately, one of the zombies who was Dio's henchman, managed to infiltrate the English Royal Air Force and become a commander. So, when no one was looking, George Joestar found this out, but he, unfortunately, like his father or his son, he was not trained in Hormone, nor was he, is it more hereditary, or is it just trained? That's also the inconsistency of Hormone. So, that's why George Joestar didn't have Hormone, so he was killed. So when Elizabeth found out about this, she went to without a second, without a word of thought, of rationale, rage and killed the commander. So, the Royal Air Force was like, what the fuck happened? I don't know why she did this. So they threw the book at her, and she was known as a murderer, even though they know nothing of Hamon or vampires. No one did. So Elizabeth was a fugitive of public enemy number one, especially in the time of war, a war criminal. And so Speedwagon, like the Shield, Speedwagon Foundation, the Shield they are of the Joestar family. Get it? You see, like how Marvel, the Avengers are the Shield, Speedwagon is the Shield of the Joestar family. Basically, made a new name for her and a new life for her in Italy. A new everything. Everything was sorted out for her. And this whole time, why he couldn't tell Joseph was because Irina just couldn't bear to know what happened to his parents because it was too hard for them to know. But also, Smokey made the point, wait! Joseph had Hamon. He's still alive. He trained and did Hamon. So wait a minute. Wait a second. So why did Lisa not say a word about any of this? Why did she take no hesitation in training him? If she was also be worried that her son could die, because she knew too. If she knew his name, Joseph Joestar, so she had to know. And she would have known about the perv thing, and not really, but would have known that we're in the same room where she was naked. Not really that. Maybe she would have known that he came in, like at the second, but she didn't know that he perved on her. But still, she had to be uncomfortable that she knew her son saw a bit of her, bosoms. So, back to what Smokey was saying, that, wait, so it's a good opportunity to tell Joseph that his mother's still alive, because he managed to do all these things. And Speedwagon even took his word for it, but it's still an irrational Irina just couldn't bear the thought of him knowing. So, then we get back to Cars, basically, the Nazis, again, the good guys right now, fought against the vampire army with their ultraviolet lights, and managed to get Cars down to supposed death and on rocks. But then, out of the fucking blue, split surprise, Cars had the Stone of Asia on and a mask on his face, a mask with the red Stone of Asia on his face. So.
And then he becomes a Twilight vampire.
Better Twilight vampire. So, he becomes the ultimate life form, the Ubermensch. Even in Jojo's Bizarre Adventure said, well, in the Japanese dub. Well, in the Japanese dub, not in the Japanese dub, the English dub. The Japanese sub, they call him the ultimate being. But I love how they even called it in the English dubbed the Ubermensch. That is so amazing. Right. And so Cars can now literally turn his hand into a squirrel and have it be vicious and horrible and have his hand back. He can base this over any organic matter. So, what does Joseph do now that he's against an impossibly evil force? He runs! Run! But he always has a plan still. So he stole a German plane and had him tail him with Cars growing wings, and then flying him into a volcano, and were von Stroheim stowed away, and they both confronted Cars together, and he went into the volcano supposedly, and then he was supposed to gonna kill him, but then he, of all things, he absorbed, he had bubbles in the armadillo armor. He had bubbles, had bubbles to make sure that his armor would always replenish. And then he basically gets his Mantis Blade, and then Luke Skywalker's the shit out of Joseph. So now that Joseph and von Stroheim are out of luck, the one thing Joseph does is, as soon as Cars is about to kill him, he pulls out the Red Stone of Asia, which when Cars had full control of Hormone now, touched and take over.
Yeah, Cars should not have survived that. But basically, long story short, Joseph gets the red stone from Cars and manages to use his wit and his powers to
No, I gotta take over. You're getting wrong. Joseph had the red stone of Asia and pulled out of his. He managed to get it when Cars became the ultimate being, and he took it and ran. But he managed to pull out in the red stone of Asia when Cars uses Hormone, he put into the redstone Asia, which had a laser beam into the volcano, and then spewed them up into the atmosphere, in which Joseph and Cars went into the stratosphere, where Cars was in space, because if nothing on Earth can kill him, then they have to get off of Earth, something not of Earth. Space. And actually, even he couldn't die in space. So he tried as hard as to morph into all things, and then he literally became a stone, and then he floated in space forever, alive, that nothing could kill him. And then Joseph died as he was devoid of all air in the atmosphere. And then we cut to his funeral, where all of his loved ones. Irina finally feared that this was exactly what she was wrong for this all ever happening. She was in Stroheim. Before that, Stroheim was the survivor, and he told them that she should have done everything in her power to make sure that none of this happened. But as something, guess who
was deeply moved. Joseph Joestar was deeply moved. Like what?
Yeah, Joseph Joestar is alive and well, and he arrived to his own funeral.
Yeah, basically, he was still alive, so it was basically a cop-out.
A fake-out.
I mean...
They even said Joseph Joestar deceased, the same way Jonathan Joestar deceased, and he stayed dead. And then he's like, what the hell? I'm alive and well! And then Susie Q came out of the car, and they all saw that she had a wedding ring on her, and that they were married also! Bam! Again! The double whammy! But why they don't know is that he told her to, after the rock apparently came back to orbit, out of orbit, back to the Earth, he managed to get back to the ocean, and then a fishing boat came to pick him up. And then when they got back to Italy, him and Susie Q made their relationship, and then they tied a knot. So why do you think he was dead? You didn't say that telegram like I told you, didn't you? And then they had the more cutely friendly version of that scene in Pulp Fiction where like Butch lost his watch and his girlfriend misplaced it. You know, actually, Joseph's story is a lot like Butch's story from Pulp Fiction, especially with Speedwagon being like,
I managed to get the vampire.
No, being like Christopher Walken, that your grandfather, that he was facing death. He knew it. Your grandfather was facing death. He knew it.
I pulled the red stone.
Not the red stone. The grandfather was Jonathan. That's Joseph's grandfather. Your grandfather was facing death. He knew it.
Right.
Yeah, he didn't have any illusions, so he passed on to his father. And his father, the birthright, would be his mother. His birthright was that your grandfather passed on your mother to your father. And then he knew if the vampires would have killed his mother, take her away, and his birthright, he'd be damned if any vampire. He'd be damned. I'm trying to combine Christopher Walken and Speedwagon's over-the-top British voice. He'll be damned if any vampire lay a finger on his wife. So it was his wife. So he decided to do anything. He sacrificed himself to kill the vampire, and then this vampire killed him. So now, Joseph, Lisa is your mother. And then Lisa found, and then Joseph went and And then Joseph Joseph and Cars are so even that as Cars went into the space, he went completely into entropy and thought. Samely with Joseph after he found out that Lisa was his mother. So basically, Irina dies and is surrounded by loved ones, and basically both Jonathan and Joseph's finally journey came ahead with Irina, with all that, with loved ones, and Speedwagon died, but the Speedwagon Foundation will live on, helping the Joestars, and will carry his legacy on. This gentlemanly thug character became a fucking billionaire, like, Shield Nick Fury style character. Wow. And then we cut to old man Joseph Joestar, as he hates the Japanese. And he hates the Japanese for some reason, but they do make good stuff. So, as we wrap up part 2, then, as next, a coffin is in the ocean, and it spells Dio. And then after that, we see the next Jojo. And there's part 2. So, our thoughts.
Thoughts on part 2. Equally as over the top as part
But
1.
it takes its time more than part 1. It's less rushed.
Yeah, I guess that's something I quite appreciate. Some of the plot lines were completely rushed to the point of being ridiculously hilarious in part 1, but the part 2, they tend to take the time more.
That's why you take it more seriously. It is a really, really good soap opera. A really good Japanese soap opera.
Yeah, even with all the over-the-top shit.
And especially with all the twists! It's that of a soap opera. All the twists.
Yeah.
Especially in the family, like, it's that of a soap opera.
Yeah, you know it's a soap opera when there's a family tree and stuff like that. Plenty of over-the-top moments. Again, some of it comes right out of the blue, but it's fun and funny to watch. Like that one vampire that Joseph faces, who just blatantly cries right out of the blue for like a good solid minute or so before going, "Okay, I'm calm now."
God, imagine I would say all the writers of Hollywood would be infinitely confused with all the pathetic man children that they've written, and he's suddenly a badass again. Imagine their faces if they saw that. Yeah. So, let's talk about the villains first, shall we? And still, technically, since the Nazis are technically villains, but allies somehow. So, the 3 new Pillarmen, the 3 who are basically like the evolution of Dio, of what Dio... Man, Dio's kicking himself that he never found out the Red Stone of Asia.
Right. The author went out of his way to name several vampires after
And also, they formed their new, unique vampire lore around them.
Yeah, there's a specific way AC/DC's name is spelled. You find out, you think, oh, haha, I see what you did there.
And the Pillarmen, they're basically like they're like Homo, like Neanderthal sapiens, but I call them Homo Pillarmen. Also homoerotic Pillarmen. Homosexual Pillarmen. Get it? Yeah. Homo Pillarmen. So they're basically like, and also another aberration to Homo sapiens, but they were once actually peaceful people, and until like one vampire one car, like it's kind of like the elves. The Pillarmen are kind of like the elves, and basically, like, it's, you see, back to the Lord of the Rings. The Pillarmen are like the elves, and basically what Cars did. So actually, no. Cars is Morgoth, and Dio is Sauron, because Cars came before Dio. So Cars, and after all, Morgoth created orcs. So Cars, since his ambition to conquer the sun, created masks, which created vampires, which are like orcs, are basically like this interpretation of orcs. And the only Uber Orkai is probably your Dio, or like the Uber Orkai. And also, especially with the Stone of Asia, it reminds you a lot of the Silmarils.
True.
And especially with Morgoth having his own crown with jewels, also Cars did the same. So Cars planned out an ambition to conquer sun, and he took two Pillarmen who came along with it, and a baby one, and that's how the Pillarmen came to be. And also he knew basically the stone mask only, but he didn't know how he was going to become immortal until he found out about the Red Stone of Asia. Until he found out. And that's where we brought him under day. And then let's talk about the inspiration Tolkien got from World War II. The Nazi regime, the Third Reich. I mean, this is beyond this is more a bigger version of, even more nuanced version of Inglourious Basterds. They even had this one. Caesar had a friend who was a Nazi, and especially it makes sense since Caesar was Italian, so that was fascist Italy. So he was straight out of Inglourious Basterds, and since also Inglourious Basterds is over the top and comedic, so that's quite fitting.
Something that we should note is that there's been quite a history between Germany and Japan, which is why you're seeing these different links together, not only in this show, but also in a variety of other media like Tanya the Evil and Naoki Urasawa's Monster and so on and so forth, even Attack on Titan. Yeah.
And von Stroheim went from Arnold Schwarzenegger and General Grievous had a love child. And I would say he's the best of Revenge of the Sith and Clone Wars micro series. Man, General Grievous wish he had that gun torso mechanic. And also with the whole, Cars Mantis Blades and the whole, German science is the greatest in all the world! With all that German, with von Stroheim, it definitely reminds me of Cyberpunk with their enhancements.
And War Machine in some ways. Now you got me imagining Arnold Schwarzenegger voicing General Grievous.
Oh. I actually want Arnold Schwarzenegger to voice von Stroheim.
That would be great.
And also, to continue von Stroheim, he died not facing against the British, because that would be hypocritical to everything he's been through with the Joestars. He died in the Battle of Stalingrad against the Russians, the Soviets, and he had a bunch of weapons that he extended out of him. My God, I feel bad for the Soviets.
He must have come across some Russian behemoth if that's the standard of how over the top battles are. Oh my days. Oh man. Although, I suppose something else to note about the villains is that the zombie army is the most useless army ever.
Well, at least they prep the weapons for the heroes and villains to fight. They only did that.
Right. Right, apart from that, they were...
And the Nazis were the good guys facing against the orcs. Imagine, I think that Tolkien would hate that the most. Would hate that the Nazis faced off against what could be seen as orcs as the good guys with their ultraviolet rays. The Nazis are portrayed in literally a good light.
I suppose if you watch films like Downfall, you probably get a bit more of an understanding of the Nazi perspective, but still understand that,
this would never be made in American. Even Inglourious Basterds wouldn't go this far to how the Nazis were portrayed in the show. And man, Hitler really missed out on immortality with what Cars did. Man, it really. What was I thinking? Wasting my time with the Lost Ark and Holy Grail. Just a dumb tomb and a silly cup when I could have something that actually would have benefited me. Evil benefits evil.
Well, keep in mind, Hitler was going against God in the context.
And also, they kept it. They kept again exactly. And this mask is going against God, trying to conquer the sun, something divine. So fitting. And also with how the Nazis were portrayed as occultists, also attention to detail. Again.
Because in the Indiana Jones films, they always portray like the Lost Ark and the Holy Grail as these artifacts are so holy and sacred that if evil tries to tamper with them, then God's gonna punish them back, no matter how.
But this stone mask, the Red Stone of Asia, and the stone mask would benefit them. After all, they weren't made by heathenists, paganists, the Aztecs, and mine again the Tasmanian Nocturne. This whole part 2 portrays Aztec vampires and the Aztec culture more accurately than Nocturne ever did. And we'll talk about more Tasmania when we get to the heroes. So we should transition more. So, the main character, Caesar and Smokey. I would say Smokey's a minor supporting character. What about Caesar?
I suppose Caesar is more of a prominent role, especially given...
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying. Smokey was a minor supporting role, while Caesar was more major.
Yeah. Especially with the impact of his death on Joseph. So yes, there is that to look into. And thanks to the slower pacing, the characters have more time to be developed.
And we even got the backstory of Caesar, about how his grandfather's impact on his family made the father wanted to protect their children by safeguarding cars in AC/DC and Wamu's sarcophagus. And Caesar's father literally gets sucked into and Caesar didn't know why he left, so he hated his father and went out on. He actually kind of looks like Dio a bit, so he went like how Dio did, but in a twist, he actually got converted back to good when he saw why his father left and what the statue did to him. So Caesar was told what his father did for him, and he dedicated his life to being better.
Alright, so yeah, you got more definitive character arcs in this way written as well. So I guess talking about it, it's safe to say that part 2 is probably the better structured and overall better part than part 1, at least so far. I mean, we've yet to see all the other parts, but this is just from what we've seen so far.
And Smokey, yeah, he's just a minor supporting character, that's all. And Misselina, yeah, he's minor supporting. Oh, then Lisa. That's what we should talk about next. And then we'll get to the main character. Lisa. Oh boy, how unfortunate for her. My God.
I am so sorry, Lisa. I'm so sorry. Anyway, she plays quite the role as being the mentor figure, and I like the idea.
If only George Stillstar had hormone, none of this bullshit would have happened.
I like the idea that Lisa has her hormone energy, keeping her looking youthful even at the age of 50.
She's one of the Dunedain.
Yeah, that's what you pointed out. That's right. She's pretty much the Jojo equivalent of a Dunedain.
I'm also convinced that he was inspired by Lord of the Rings too.
Yeah, you can say that. I kind of like the idea because it actually is scientifically possible. If you have the right nutrition and in you and the right kind of routine, you can actually make yourself look young for quite an extended
But not to the way Lisa did.
Yeah. And she does teach some lessons in regards to how to use hormone specifically.
And man, her hormone skills is amazing. It's also subversion that the female is the mentor, the woman is the mentor.
Nice little subversion there.
Exactly. It's better. It's also better women betrayal than of modern day America.
It's something about
Even though she was a little woman in the fridge thing, like from Batman the Killing Joke.
I think the thing about Japan is that they're not really raised in the sort of modernistic way of thinking that the West has today. Japan still holds tradition and a certain other values close to heart.
And that's also why Suzuki is super cute and feminine still, also, as my character. And that's where we get the Joseph Joestar, the main Jojo, the next Jojo. He truly is better Richter Belmont than Richter Belmont in Netflix. He earned that bandana, and that shows, like, even they said, what's with the headband? But in this, the headband was of his dead friend who his friend sacrificed his life to get the antidote for his ring, and also give him a fighting chance against the enemy.
Something worth noting is that people have criticized Richter Belmont because his supposed character growth kind of just comes out of the blue, and it makes for very inconsistent characterization.
But even as Joseph was a bit of a twat and an immature, like, fool, he did have that Jonathan Joestar blood in him, that new honor and dignity and positive masculine traits. Like, even like when he's facing against Wamu, in AC/DC, they saw them as honorable foes.
What?
As
Sorry to interrupt.
Essentially, I'll carry on from you, Brooks. I'll keep talking. So, Joseph Joestar absolutely has a more definitive character arc than Richter because not only is he a bit strangely more powerful, but he's got more time to properly grow. The time between one character arc and another is much more rewarding, and as you said before, the whole bandana scene is much more deserving.
And it was literally in a blood bubble. Blood bubble.
Honestly, there's just so many things that JoJo's Bizarre Adventure gets better than Nocturne.
We're just gonna go pick up.
It's satisfying to see Joseph Joestar
recording.
his way through all these
Yes. I thought we were
different
going
scenarios.
to
Yeah,
eat there.
like some of these powers can just come right out of the
He gets
blue.
finished it?
There's something quite satisfying about
I know, I'm not. I'm almost done.
seeing how Joseph is able to outwit his opponents through clever strategies, even when he's quite full of himself at times.
And he clearly is street smart from the beginning. If back then the Cyberpunk, if he would choose his protagonist, he would be big street smart.
Yeah. Another thing worth noting in regards to comparing Nocturne to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. We've mentioned this before, we're going to say it again. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure definitely portrays the Aztec culture more accurately than Nocturne.
It's funny. It's so funny that it is either coincidence or it's intentional that the Aztec vampire, who's the main villain of Richter Belmont, just as the Aztec vampire Cars is the main villain of Joseph, that I don't know if it's coincidence or intentional, because Cars is a brutal fuck who literally is the worst of the Aztec vampires of those people, and they made the same ethnicity of the villain of Richter Belmont. What? That's even more bizarre than JoJo's Bizarre Adventure!
Yeah, not to mention,
and not in a good way!
In Nocturne, the storytellers are trying to make the Aztec villain sympathetic and stuff like that, but it's so...
But in both 1 and 2, when you see the Aztec murals, it's clear as day as they were messed up. They were sadistic. I mean, at first, in part 2, you could say that there was some good to them, but you could definitely say that when Cars took over, it was a reign of terror. That he turned the Aztec people into sick fucks.
Right. that somehow makes more sense than what Nocturne tried to explain. Like, even the end credits of, like, part 1...
No, it wasn't like that they were good people and that they turned bad. It's just that they were so happily... They weren't as fucked up, but they're the reason... Cars is the reason they were fucked up. Because he created the stone masks.
Right. But I was trying to say that even the end credits of part 1 portrays Aztec culture more accurately than Nocturne, with like the series of like the cultural carvings, the bloody rituals that they did, like the Trail of Blood.
And now it's vampires, also tying into Twilight Bane and Nocturne. Except the difference is that in this, they actually managed to do vampires in daylight and actually make it make sense and actually make them sparkle good. Because, man, trying to block out the sun, Dracula already did that. Why not conquer the sun? Oh, wait, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure did it much better and already did it much better. Like, I don't get that. And actually, it's kind of similar if you think about it. Because in Twilight Bane Nocturne, there was this whole thing of vampire messiah. So in a way, that's like how Cars was a vampire messiah. Like that he became the Ubermensch. But in that, it's much better.
Right.
And it's more original. It's not ripping out Berserk!
Right. I suppose it's interesting to have this, like, Cars be like this Antichrist figure that, but do it much better than Nocturne did, because they, like, it's very clear that as bizarre as JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is, it portrays vampires more accurately than Nocturne.
And this is a new, different type, but this is not a European Eastern. It's a Western, a Mesoamerican American, Middle American, Central American, like, new Aztec lords, not European vampire lords. It's you know, it's funny that the east of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is taken from the west, that the east is of European, in relatively speaking, of European vampire is of the Western Central American vampire. So Japanese, West, Middle American, Central American vampires, West, East European vampires. I love that.
I think I think by this point it's safe to say that the people of Japan have less of a bias and more of an open mind in regards.
And no, remember, this is back then in the 90s. This is back then in the 90s, remind you. Back in the 90s, it was in 2012 where the anime finally was released. And I think it's still relevant to this day, but still. So, that was our 2-part review of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 1 and Part 2. And we'll probably do Part 3 next, and maybe Part 4 at the same time, too. So, until then, hope you had a good time.
And cue the to be continued meme.
We can add that in. You don't need to do that. Alright, bye.